Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really diving into the deep end, pulling together this huge stack of sources. We've got psychology, biology, behavioral science.
Even philosophy. And the goal is really to kind of map out these core conflicts we all experience, right?
Exactly. Conflicts that drive so much of, well, everything. We're looking at clashing beliefs, habits, and even digging down into our, basic biological wiring.
That fundamental system that decides if we feel safe or threatened, it's all connected.
So consider this our mission today, to give you a kind of roadmap. Why does it feel so bad when things don't line up in our heads?
Yeah, and what's actually happening when we try to change our minds or when we're under pressure?
We want to connect the dots, from the lab studies right through to maybe the therapy room.
Yeah.
A whole picture of how we handle inconsistency.
Psychological and physiological. Let's unpack it.
Okay, so let's start at the foundation, this need for things to make sense internally. Leon Festinger's cognitive dissonance theory seems like the place to begin. It sort of defines that moment things start to clash inside, doesn't it?
It really does. It's foundational. The core idea is pretty straightforward, actually. Our minds are fundamentally consistency-seeking engines.
We just want things to line up.
Exactly. Beliefs, opinions, behaviors we strive, often totally unconsciously, for them all to be in harmony.
And when they're not?
That's dissonance. That's the inconsistency. And it doesn't just feel, off. It creates this real psychological discomfort.
Like an itch you have to scratch.
Precisely. It's not just annoying, it's motivating. That discomfort acts like a drive. It pushes us to do something to reduce that clash, to get back to that feeling of internal balance.
So it's not just a little mental niggle, it's an actual alarm bell telling us something's wrong.
A very insistent alarm bell. And how loud that bell rings, well, that depends on how important the clashing things are to you.
Okay, so the stakes matter.
Absolutely. The magnitude, the intensity of the dissonance is directly linked to how much you care about the conflicting elements. The sources nail this with a simple example.
Like choosing soap.
Right. You pick a soap brand. Maybe you slightly prefer another, but the dissonance is tiny. Who cares, really? It's soap.
Low stakes.
Very low.
Yeah.
But contrast that with, say, buying a new car. You've spent weeks researching, saved up a lot of money.
You probably narrowed it down to two really good options.
Exactly. And both had great features, things you really liked. When you finally pick one, you've just rejected something else that was also very appealing.
And potentially expensive.
Right. So the importance of that decision ramps up the dissonance. That rejection of the other good option creates significant psychological discomfort. There's pressure to make that feel right.
Which leads us neatly into how we deal with that pressure, especially after the fact, that post-decision dissonance.
Yes. This is something we all do. The decision's made, the car's in the driveway, you've signed the papers. Suddenly all those great things about the car you didn't choose start nagging at you.
That little voice saying, maybe the other one had better mileage.
Exactly that voice. So how does the mind shut it up? Since you can't undo the choice easily.
You change how you see the choices.
Bingo. You perform a kind of psychological adjustment. You start to subtly, or maybe not so subtly, inflate the positives of the car you bought.
Oh, the safety rating is top-notch. And this color is actually much more practical.
Precisely. And at the same time, you start downplaying the good things about the one you rejected, or even finding new flaws.
Those seats weren't as comfortable as I first thought. And it probably would have used more gas.
You're actively increasing the mental gap between the two options after you've chosen. You're making your decision feel, in retrospect, like the obviously superior one. It's self-justification in action.
A bit like mental PR, to make ourselves feel better about our own choices.
It really is. And this drive for consistency, for consonance, doesn't stop there. It dictates what information we look for next.
Right. Selective exposure. We seek out stuff that confirms we were right.
You got it. Dissonance pushes us towards information that agrees with what we already believe or what we've just done consonant cognitions. And just as importantly, it makes us actively avoid stuff that might stir things up again.
So that new car owner.
Suddenly, they're noticing every single ad for their make and model. They might even read the owner's manual cover to cover looking for validation.
And car ads are perfect for that, right? They're always positive.
They're tailor-made consonant information, easy validation. See, great choice.
And the flip side is avoiding the conflict, especially when it's about our behavior versus, say, health warnings.
Ooh, that's a big one. Think about smoking. You know it's bad for you. The health information is everywhere, unavoidable. That creates huge dissonance if you smoke.
The behavior clashes directly with the knowledge.
Violently. So what gives? Quitting is hard. Often, the easier path, psychologically, is to attack the knowledge.
How?
You might question the studies. They exaggerate the risks. Or you find exceptions. My uncle smoked till he was 90 and was fine. Or you minimize the personal threat. It won't happen to me.
You build a little mental fortress to protect the behavior.
Exactly. The mind filters reality to reduce that uncomfortable contradiction, even if sticking with the behavior is physically harmful. The psychological discomfort must be dealt with one way or another.
This gets really fascinating when we talk about forced compliance, like when you have to say or do something you don't actually believe because someone's pressuring you.
Yeah.
Your boss, maybe.
Yeah, that's a classic scenario. You say the thing publicly, maybe toe the company line in a meeting, even though privately you think it's nonsense.
So initially, you're just doing it because of the pressure, no real change of heart.
Right. The external pressure is the reason. But then the dissonance kicks in hard. I said X, but I believe Y. That's a big internal clash.
So you need to resolve that clash.
You do. And the sources show that often the way people resolve it is by subtly shifting their private belief to align better with what they publicly said or did. They start to think, well, maybe there's some truth to X after all.
But here's the counterintuitive part. You mentioned the role of punishment or reward.
This is really interesting. If the punishment for not complying is huge, like you'll definitely get fired if you don't say X, then you have a very strong external justification for your actions.
I only said it because I had to keep my job.
Exactly. The large punishment provides consonance. It explains away the inconsistency. There's less pressure to change your private belief.
But if the pressure is subtle, just a small reward or a minor consequence.
That's where it gets tricky for the mind. If you comply under minimal pressure, you can't easily blame the external situation. You lack that strong justification.
So you're left asking, why did I actually do that?
Right. And the easiest way to answer that, to reduce the dissonance, is to conclude, I must actually sort of believe it. So paradoxically, less external pressure can lead to more internal belief change. It makes the person take ownership of the action.
Wow. That's a subtle but powerful lever for changing attitudes.
Definitely. And it scales up. When dissonance challenges not just a single belief, but a whole worldview, especially one shared by a group, people don't just quietly doubt. They often double down.
Using the group for support.
Social support is crucial. It's like adding layers and layers of consonant thoughts. See? All these other smart people believe it too. It shores up the belief system.
The sources bring up a historical example here, the Millerites.
Yes, a really striking case from the 1840s. William Miller predicted, based on his interpretation of the Bible, that Christ would return on a specific date. Thousands believed him, sold possessions, prepared.
And then the date came and went. Nothing happened.
Imagine the dissonance. It wasn't just disappointment. Their entire reality, their social fabric, their understanding of God, it was shattered. A massive, undeniable disconfirmation.
So what did they do? Give up?
Some did, of course, but many core believers did the opposite. They responded with what's called mass proselytizing. They redoubled their efforts to convert new people.
Why? That seems illogical.
It's dissonance reduction on a grand scale. If they could convince others that the core message was still true, despite the failed date, it added powerful consonant elements. Look how many people are joining us. The message must be right.
So recruiting became a way to validate their own shaken beliefs.
Exactly. They rationalized the failure. Maybe we miscalculated the exact timing, but the core truth is sound. And sought social proof through conversion. It shows just how incredibly powerful the drive for psychological consistency is. It can literally reshape how people interpret reality itself.
Okay, so we've established this powerful drive in the mind to keep beliefs consistent, but there's another layer of conflict management, right? Something older, faster, more biological.
Absolutely. We've been talking about psychological comfort, how the thinking brain handles clashing ideas. Now we need to shift gears and look at the body's ancient architecture for dealing with conflict at the level of survival safety versus threat. This takes us into the biology.
It seems like our conscious mind really dislikes inconsistency, but below that, our body has this much older system scanning for threats, things that are inconsistent with staying alive.
That's a great way to put it. And this system is incredibly fast and operates largely outside our conscious awareness. We're talking about the limbic system, the emotional brain.
And the famous low road versus high road.
Exactly. Let's say there's a sudden sensory input, a loud bang, a shadow moving quickly in your peripheral vision. That information hits a relay station in the brain called the thalamus.
Okay.
From the thalamus, the information splits. The high road is the slower route. It goes up to the prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of the brain, for careful analysis. Okay, what was that noise? Was it dangerous?
That takes time, though.
It does, which is why the low road exists. It's a super fast shortcut directly from the thalamus to the amygdala.
The brain's smoke detector.
Pretty much. The amygdala's job is to rapidly assess emotional significance, especially potential threats. And it does this before the thinking brain has even finished processing.
So the amygdala gets the first vote on whether we're in danger.
It gets the first, loudest, fastest vote. If the amygdala flags a potential threat, even a possible one,
Bam, stress hormones.
instantly, adrenaline, cortisol flood the system. Your heart rate jumps, muscles tense, breathing changes, the whole fight or flight response kicks in. All before your conscious mind might have even fully registered what the stimulus was.
You're already reacting before you finish thinking.
Which is great if it's a real danger, like a car swerving towards you. That speed saves lives.
But what if the amygdala is oversensitive? Or if the high road, the thinking brain's ability to say, hey, false alarm, is weak?
That's where problems arise, especially in conditions like PTSD or chronic anxiety. If the amygdala's threat interpretation is too intense, or if the prefrontal cortex filtering isn't working well, people can get stuck.
Shock how?
They lose the ability to regulate those automatic emergency responses. They might have an exaggerated startle reflex long after a noise, or feel constantly on edge, hypervigilant. Or they might have sudden, seemingly out of control emotional outbursts.
Because the biological alarm system is basically stuck in the on position.
Exactly. It's a feedback loop of perceived danger, even when the external environment is objectively safe. The body is living in a state of constant, unresolved conflict between safety signals and threat signals.
And this idea of the nervous system breaking down under conflicting signals, it actually has roots way back, doesn't it? With Pavlov.
It does, and it's fascinating. We usually think of Pavlov and dogs drooling at bells, classical conditioning. But he also stumbled onto something darker, experimental neuroses.
This wasn't about learning associations. It was about breaking the system.
Precisely. Pavlov found that he could induce serious pathological disturbances in dogs by creating an irresolvable conflict within their nervous system. Specifically, a clash between excitation, the learned drive to respond or approach, and inhibition, the learned need to stop or hold back.
How did he set that up? It sounds kind of cruel.
Well, by modern standards, some of it certainly was, but the setup was often like this. Train a dog that a specific stimulus, say a metronome, ticking at 120 beats per minute, signals food is coming. That's the excitatory stimulus.
Okay, dog learns to expect food, maybe salivates.
Right. Then train the same dog that a different stimulus, say a metronome at 60 beats per minute, means no food is coming. The dog has to inhibit its response. That's the inhibitory stimulus.
And they learn to tell the difference.
Usually quite easily, if the difference is clear. But then Pavlov started making the two signals more and more similar. Maybe the inhibitory signal became 70 BPM, then 80, then 100, then 110, getting closer and closer to the 120 BPM food signal.
Making it harder and harder for the dog's brain to know whether to get excited or hold back.
Exactly. The cortex, the part of the brain responsible for making these fine distinctions, gets put under immense strain. It's trying to resolve this increasingly ambiguous, conflicting input.
And eventually.
Eventually, the system couldn't handle the conflict. The dog was pushed into a pathological state, the experimental neurosis.
What did that look like?
The signs were often sudden and dramatic. A sharp decline or even complete disappearance of all the learned responses. The dog might stop responding to either metronome or respond erratically. It was a breakdown in the brain's ability to regulate its own processes.
Like a system crash.
A biological system crash. In severe cases, it could lead to convulsions, almost like an epileptic fit. The conflict was literally overwhelming the nervous system.
And the sources mentioned these weren't just temporary upsets. They could cause lasting changes.
Yes, that's the really sobering part. These severe stress episodes could cause permanent neurological shifts. Pavlov reported dogs suddenly becoming completely deaf after an attack or drastically changing their social behavior.
How so?
A previously friendly dog might suddenly start fearfully dodging humans or other dogs, losing all its normal social instincts. It suggests the intense, unresolved conflict led to a kind of functional exhaustion of the brain cells involved.
Like they just gave up.
Almost. They might rapidly flip into an inhibitory state, think profound fatigue, almost like sleep, just to escape the overwhelming stimulation. The brain essentially gets too tired, too stressed to function adaptively anymore.
That's a powerful illustration of how biological systems react to inescapable conflict. Which brings us to a more contemporary understanding, the polyvagal theory.
Right, Stephen Porges' work, it gives us a much more nuanced picture than just fight or flight. It sees the nervous system, particularly the vagus nerve, as having evolved in stages, creating a hierarchy of responses based on perceived safety.
So it's not just an on-off switch for danger.
Not at all. Think of it like three systems layered on top of each other. The oldest, evolutionarily, is linked to the dorsal part of the vagus nerve. This controls the immobilization or freeze response. Think possum playing dead. It's the shutdown system activated under perceived life threat.
Okay, the most primitive defense.
Then, layered above that, is the familiar sympathetic nervous system, the engine for fight or flight. Mobilization, energy, action. But the newest and most relevant for us as social mammals is the system governed by the ventral part of the vagus nerve. This is the myelinated vagus.
And this one is different.
Very different. This is the social engagement system. It's what allows us to feel calm, connected, safe with others. It regulates heart rate variability, facial expressions, vocal tones, all the things we use to communicate safety and build relationships.
So this ventral vagal system is like the safe and social mode.
Exactly. It acts like a brake on the fight or flight system, allowing us to relax, listen, empathize, and connect. But here's the crucial part. This system only comes online when our nervous system perceives safety.
Ah, so perception is key. Porges calls this neuroception.
Neuroception. It's the nervous system's constant subconscious scanning of the environment and our internal state for cues of safety, danger, or life threat.
Below the level of conscious thought.
Way below. You might logically know you're in a safe place, but if your neuroception picks up subtle cues of threat, maybe someone's tone of voice or a lack of eye contact, or even just a memory triggered internally, your body can shift states without you even realizing why.
So my body might be reacting defensively, even if my thinking mind says everything's fine.
Absolutely. If neuroception registers danger, the social engagement system, ventral vagus, goes offline, the brake comes off, and the body automatically shifts down that hierarchy into the older defense system, sympathetic activation, fight, flight, or even dorsal vagal shutdown, freeze.
Which makes connection impossible.
Pretty much. You can't truly connect or communicate effectively if your body is primed for defense. Safety is the biological prerequisite for social behavior.
And the devastating impact of lacking that felt safety early on is seen in research on children who experience instability, right? Like in institutions.
Yes. The research on institutionalized children and reactive attachment disorder, or RAD, is heartbreaking but incredibly informative here. It shows how vital, predictable, safe social cues are for development.
What did they find?
The sources point to a clear link. The more different caregivers a child had, meaning the less consistency and familiarity in their social world, the higher their scores on measures of RAD.
So constant change meant constant threat.
From the nervous system's perspective, yes. Familiarity, seeing the same faces, hearing the same voices, experiencing predictable rhythms of care is what signals safety. These familiar cues actually trigger inhibitory pathways that calm the limbic defense system.
They learn the world is safe and predictable through relationship.
Exactly. But if the caregivers keep changing, the system never gets enough consistent safety cues. It's constantly being reset by unfamiliarity, keeping the child's nervous system locked in a high-alert defensive state.
Making it incredibly difficult, maybe impossible, to form secure bonds.
It fundamentally impairs the capacity for trust and connection. The biological need for safety wasn't met, creating a deep internal conflict that shapes their relational future.
Which perfectly sets the stage for looking at how these internal states, our need for consistency, our biological wiring for safety play out when we actually try to form relationships as adults, and also how modern life adds its own layer of conflict through choice. So when we try to form adult relationships, we're essentially bringing our entire history, our learned patterns for consistency, our neuroception of safety into the mix.
We absolutely are. And attachment theory gives us a great framework for understanding this, suggesting that our early experiences often crystallize into adult attachment styles. Broadly, secure, anxious, or avoidant.
Each with its own set of beliefs about closeness.
Right. Each style carries unique, often unconscious beliefs about oneself. Am I worthy of love? About partners, can I rely on others? And about intimacy itself. Is closeness safe or dangerous?
Let's focus on the more conflicted styles. Anxious and avoidant. What defines the anxious style?
The anxious style is typically marked by a deep-seated fear of abandonment. Someone with this style often worries intensely about their partner leaving or losing interest. They might crave a lot of closeness and reassurance.
Maybe feel like others are reluctant to get as close as they want.
Exactly. They might have a strong desire to merge with their partner, which paradoxically can sometimes feel overwhelming and push the partner away, confirming their underlying fear.
And the avoidance style. It's kind of the mirror image, isn't it?
In many ways, yes. The avoidance style prioritizes independence and self-reliance, often feeling uncomfortable when relationships become too emotionally intense or demanding.
Closeness feels threatening.
It can feel suffocating or like a loss of freedom. They might downplay the importance of relationships, suppress their own emotional needs, and create distance when they feel a partner is getting too close. Vulnerability feels risky.
So what happens when these two styles get together? An anxious person and an avoidant person.
That's the classic setup for what's often called the anxious avoidant trap. And the sources are clear. This pairing consistently leads to some of the lowest relationship satisfaction levels.
Why is it such a difficult dynamic?
Because their core needs and fears directly clash. It creates this painful cycle. The anxious person, needing reassurance and closeness, makes bids for connection.
They reach out more.
Right. But that very act of reaching out can trigger the avoidant person's fear of engulfment or loss of independence. So what do?
They pull back, create distance.
Exactly. Which, of course, triggers the anxious person's deepest fear, abandonment. See? They are pulling away.
So the anxious person then pursues harder to try and regain that connection.
Which makes the avoidant person feel even more pressured and withdraw even further. It's a perfectly reinforcing negative loop. Each person's attempt to get their needs met actually triggers the other person's defenses, making both feel misunderstood and deeply unsatisfied.
It's like they're locked in a dance where both are constantly stepping on each other's toes.
A very painful dance. And interestingly, as you pointed out earlier, there's a strange kind of negative consonance here.
How so?
Both partners, while miserable, are actually having their core negative beliefs about relationships confirmed. The anxious person thinks, see, I have to chase love, people always leave. The avoidant person thinks, see, intimacy is demanding and tries to control me. The cycle validates their dysfunctional worldview.
That's bleak. And the sources suggest that a lot of common dating advice might actually make this worse.
Yeah, this is a really interesting critique. Think about advice like, play hard to get, don't call him back right away, act mysterious. What is that advice really advocating?
Unavailability, emotional distance.
Exactly. It's telling you to suppress your genuine needs for connection to appear more desirable, less needy.
And who finds unavailability attractive?
Primarily the avoidant person. By acting aloof or unavailable, you inadvertently signal to an avoidant partner that you won't challenge their need for distance. You seem safe because you're not demanding closeness.
So that advice might help you attract an avoidant partner.
But it does so by encouraging you to betray your own authentic needs from the start. It sets up a dynamic where the avoidant person remains in control of the level of intimacy, ensuring you likely won't get the closeness you might actually crave. You win the battle by losing the war, essentially.
Wow. Okay, let's shift from the conflicts between people to a conflict that seems increasingly common within us, especially in modern life.
Yeah.
The sheer burden of choice.
Oh, yes. The paradox of choice. We think more options are always better, but the reality is often different. We face this relentless demand to make decisions about everything, big and small.
Phone plans, investment strategies, what to watch tonight, which toothpaste.
Exactly. And the sources talk about the tyranny of small decisions. The cumulative weight, the constant cognitive effort of evaluating and choosing adds up to significant psychological distress.
It's exhausting.
It really is. And this burden is amplified depending on your decision-making style. Are you a maximizer or a satisficer?
Okay, break those down.
A satisficer looks for an option that is good enough. They have criteria, they find something that meets them and they choose it, then move on.
Like, this pair of jeans fits, looks okay, and is in my budget. Done.
Pretty much. A maximizer, on the other hand, feels compelled to find the absolute best possible option. They need to research exhaustively, compare everything, and ensure they haven't missed out on perfection.
Are these the best jeans? Could there be a better fit, a better price, a trendier style somewhere else?
Exactly. And the research consistently shows that maximizers, despite their efforts to get the best, are generally less happy, less satisfied with their choices, more prone to regret, and even more likely to be depressed than satisficers.
Why? Why does aiming for the best make you feel worse?
It comes down to that internal conflict again, fueled by two main things: anticipated regret and post-decision regret. Maximizers are plagued by the fear of making the wrong choice.
The what-if game.
Constantly, even before they choose, they're anticipating how bad they'll feel if they pick something suboptimal. This involves a lot of counterfactual thinking.
Thinking about the alternative, the paths not taken.
Right. And this makes even attractive options feel less appealing. Why? Because the maximizer creates a contrast effect. They compare the real available option, which always has flaws, to an imagined, perfect, idealized alternative.
So even a great restaurant meal gets compared to the hypothetical perfect meal they could have had elsewhere or made at home.
Precisely. The real experience almost inevitably falls short of the imagined ideal, reducing their enjoyment and satisfaction in the moment. They're constantly haunted by the ghost of the better choice.
That sounds incredibly stressful.
It is. And then there's the post-decision regret, which is often amplified for maximizers because they invested so much effort in choosing. If it's not perfect, the disappointment is greater.
And this internal pressure cooker of choice and regret gets even worse because of one more modern factor: social comparison.
Oh, massively. It used to be, you compared yourself to your neighbors, your colleagues, people in your town. The comparison pool was relatively small and local.
You had realistic benchmarks, more or less.
Generally, yes. But now, technology, television, the internet, and especially social media has thrown us all into one gigantic global comparison pond.
We're not just comparing ourselves to our neighbors. We're comparing ourselves to curated highlight reels from millions of people worldwide.
Exactly. We're exposed to unrealistic, often digitally enhanced standards of success, beauty, wealth, happiness, everything. This constant exposure to seemingly perfect lives inevitably makes most people, those who are average or below average on any given metric, feel inadequate.
It creates this huge, unbridgeable gap between our reality and the perceived reality of others.
A perpetual source of dissonance and dissatisfaction. The conflict isn't just about choosing the best product, it's about feeling like our life isn't measuring up to this impossible global standard.
Okay, so we've laid out a lot of the conflicts: internal beliefs, biological threats, relational traps, the burden of choice. Now, crucially, how do we move towards resolving these, towards integration?
This is where it gets hopeful, because there are definitely pathways. And a fundamental starting point is shifting our core beliefs about ourselves, particularly about growth and ability. Carol Dweck's work on mindsets is key here.
The fixed mindset versus the growth mindset.
Exactly. Dweck's insight is profound. What you believe about your abilities radically changes how you interpret experiences, especially challenges and failures.
So the fixed mindset.
That's the belief that your intelligence, your talents, your basic abilities are fixed traits. You have a certain amount, and that's it. Success proves your inherent talent. Failure proves your lack of it.
Which makes failure feel incredibly threatening.
Devastating. Because it feels like a judgment on your fundamental worth. The sources show that in organizations dominated by a fixed mindset, people become defensive. They hide mistakes, avoid challenges, maybe even cheat anything to protect the illusion of being gifted. Conflict is seen as a threat.
But the growth mindset flips that script entirely.
Completely. The growth mindset is the belief that abilities can be developed through dedication, effort, learning, and feedback. Failure isn't a judgment, it's an opportunity to learn and improve.
It's just information.
Exactly. And in cultures or environments that foster a growth mindset, people are more willing to take risks, collaborate, share information, and support each other through challenges. Conflict is seen as a chance for collective growth. That shift in belief fundamentally alters how individuals and groups navigate difficulties.
So changing that underlying belief about potential is huge. What about changing actual behavior, especially when we feel stuck between wanting to do something good for ourselves and actually doing it?
Ah, the classic intention-action gap. This often comes down to friction. James Clear talks about this in his third law of behavior change. Make it easy.
Based on the idea that we tend to follow the path of least resistance.
Precisely. It's the principle of least action in human behavior. We naturally gravitate towards what's easiest. So, if you want to build a good habit or overcome the internal conflict that keeps you from doing it, you need to reduce the friction associated with that habit.
Make it incredibly convenient.
So convenient that you'll do it even when you lack motivation. Want to eat healthier? Pre-chop your vegetables. Want to exercise in the morning? Lay out your clothes the night before. Want to read more? Put a book on your pillow.
Design your environment to make the good choice the easy choice.
You're essentially removing the decision points and the effort barriers that cause the internal conflict and drain your willpower. You make the desired path the default path.
And this focus on the environment, on the circumstances rather than just willpower, connects back to B.F. Skinner's ideas too, right? About not just blaming internal motivation.
Absolutely. Skinner strongly argued against attributing behavior, or lack thereof, solely to internal states like motivation, willpower, or even laziness.
He looked at the environment.
He emphasized the critical role of circumstances, particularly our history of reinforcement, what behaviors have been rewarded or punished in the past. If someone isn't doing something we think they should be doing, Skinner would say, instead of blaming their lack of inner drive.
Look at the environment. Look at the incentives, the barriers, the history.
Exactly. Blaming a lack of motivation is often an easy way out. It stops us from asking the harder, more important questions. Are the environmental conditions actually supporting this behavior? Are there hidden disincentives? Are the contingencies, as he called them, defective?
It shifts the focus from internal failing to external factors we might actually be able to change.
Yes, it encourages inquiry into the system, not just judgment of the individual.
This move away from self-blame and towards understanding the different parts of ourselves leads us beautifully into a therapeutic model that really embraces internal conflict, internal family systems, or IFS.
IFS is a powerful and compassionate model. Its core idea is that the mind isn't monolithic. It's naturally made up of various parts or subpersonalities.
And these parts aren't seen as bad or pathological.
Not at all. They're seen as valuable resources that have taken on certain roles, often in response to life experiences. You might have an inner critic part, a people-pleaser part, an achiever part, a childlike part.
All trying to help in some way, even if their methods cause problems.
Exactly. And IFS posits that beneath all these parts, everyone has a core resource of wisdom, compassion, and confidence called the self.
The calm, curious center.
Yes, the self is described by those C words: calm, curiosity, compassion, confidence, courage, creativity, connection, clarity. It's the undamaged, resourceful core that knows how to heal.
So the goal isn't to get rid of the difficult parts.
No, the goal is to access that self-energy and from that place, build relationships with your parts, especially the ones causing conflict.
Like the exiles and protectors.
Right. Exiles are the young, vulnerable parts holding the pain, fear, shame from past wounds. They get locked away because their feelings are overwhelming.
And protectors try to keep them locked away.
Exactly. There are two kinds. Managers are proactive. They try to control life to prevent the exiles from being triggered. Think perfectionism, hypervigilance, excessive planning.
Trying to keep everything safe and predictable.
And then there are firefighters. They react after an exile has been triggered and its painful emotions start to surface. Their job is to douse the flames immediately, often through impulsive or extreme behaviors.
Like substance use, binge eating, rage, dissociation.
Things that numb or distract from the exile's pain, but often create new problems.
And IFS's fighting these protectors just makes them fight back harder.
Because they believe they're essential for survival. They're trying to protect the system from overwhelming pain. The IFS approach is radically different. You turn towards these parts with self-led curiosity and compassion.
You listen to them, understand their fears, their positive intentions.
Yes, you build trust. You let the protector know that the self is present now and capable of handling the exile's pain in a new way. When the protector feels heard and trusts the self, it can relax its extreme role and allow the exile to receive healing. The internal conflict resolves through connection, not war.
That emphasis on kindness towards our own internal struggles links directly to the concept of self-compassion.
It really does. Kristen Neff's work outlines self-compassion as having three core components. It's a way of relating to ourselves, especially during times of suffering or perceived failure.
What are the three parts?
First is self-kindness. This means treating yourself with the same care, warmth, and understanding you would offer a good friend who is struggling. Instead of harsh self-criticism, you offer gentleness.
Actively meeting your own needs.
Yes, emotionally, physically, taking action to soothe and comfort yourself. The second part is common humanity.
Recognizing you're not alone in your struggles.
Exactly. It's the understanding that suffering, imperfection, and making mistakes are part of the shared human experience. Everyone struggles. This directly counters the feeling of isolation and shame that often comes with difficulty. Why am I the only one feeling this way?
Which is such a common thought during conflict or failure.
It really fuels the pain. Common humanity fosters connection and perspective. And the third component is mindfulness.
Being aware of your feelings without getting lost in them.
Precisely. It's holding your painful thoughts and feelings in balanced awareness, acknowledging them without suppression, but also without exaggeration or over-identification. Yes, I feel pain, but I am not only my pain.
So mindfulness helps you see clearly what's happening and what you need.
It facilitates that authentic understanding. Together, these three components, self-kindness, common humanity, mindfulness, create a powerful internal resource for navigating conflict and building resilience without resorting to self-attack.
Okay, one more crucial pathway, bringing us back to the body. How do we resolve the conflicts that get physically stuck, like in trauma? Peter Levine's work.
Somatic experiencing, yes. Levine's core idea is that trauma often results from an incomplete or thwarted biological survival response.
Fight, flight, or freeze gets interrupted.
Right. The massive amount of energy mobilized by the nervous system to defend the organism gets trapped. It doesn't complete its cycle and discharge. This often leads to the freeze response becoming chronic.
The body gets stuck in a state of high alert, but also immobility.
Exactly. And that trapped survival energy doesn't just disappear. It gets channeled into symptoms: chronic anxiety, fear, rage, depression, physical pain, dissociation. The body is still holding that unresolved conflict.
So how does somatic experiencing help release that? It's not just talking about it, is it?
Definitely not just talking. It's about gently, safely helping the body complete those thwarted responses. The key tool is the felt sense.
Tuning into the body's internal sensations.
Yes, developing a deep awareness of physical sensations, images, feelings, rhythms, impulses. It's about listening to the body's story. The process involves carefully contacting that bound survival energy in small, manageable doses. You don't overwhelm the system. It often involves pendulation, gently guiding awareness back and forth between the difficult sensations associated with the trauma vortex, and sensations of safety, resource, or calm in the body, the healing vortex.
So you're titrating the experience, touching the pain, then touching safety, back and forth.
Exactly. This rhythmic process allows the nervous system to gradually process and discharge the trapped energy without becoming overwhelmed. It helps complete the self-protective motor patterns that were interrupted.
You're essentially renegotiating the traumatic event at the physiological level.
You're creating a new felt experience in the body, one where the survival response completes, the energy flows freely again, and the nervous system can return to a state of balance and regulation. The physical conflict is resolved through this mindful, embodied process.
Wow. We've journeyed from the mind's need for consistent beliefs, through the body's primal need for safety, and into these powerful pathways for healing and integration. It strikes me that so many of these pathways, mindset shifts, IFS, somatic experiencing, seem to require us to turn towards the very conflict, chaos, and vulnerability that our basic wiring tells us to avoid.
That's a central paradox, isn't it? And it's something thinkers have grappled with for a long time. Freud, for instance, saw a parallel between how civilization develops and how individuals develop.
About so.
Both processes, he argued, depend on renunciation. To live together in society, we have to curb some of our primal instincts or drives. We trade some individual freedom for collective security.
But that creates an internal conflict.
It creates enduring tension. The demands of the superego, the internalized rules of society, clash with instinctual desires, leading to what he called a consciousness of guilt or discontent. For Freud, this internal conflict was almost the unavoidable price of being civilized.
Jung, though, seemed to view engaging with that inner conflict, particularly the unconscious parts, as more of a necessary quest.
Very much so. Jung talked about the self, not just as our conscious ego, but as this larger totality encompassing both conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche. Achieving this wholeness, this integration, was the goal of individuation.
And he suggested the key to this wholeness is often hidden.
Often hidden in plain sight, symbolized by something seemingly insignificant or overlooked, a despised stone, a hidden treasure. He believed the potential for transformation lies in those parts of ourselves we've neglected or deemed unimportant, the root of our unconscious energy.
Which requires voluntarily looking where we might not want to look. This brings us to that idea of the heroic path versus, well, the alternative.
Yes, the distinction between the hero and what some sources call the unfortunate madman. The heroic path involves the voluntary sacrifice of comfortable certainty, the willingness to step out of the safety of the known group beliefs.
Embracing the chaos.
Indefinitely accepting the psychological chaos that follows when our old maps no longer work. The hero chooses to confront the unexpected, the dragon, the contradiction, on ground they've chosen in order to learn and be transformed.
And the madman.
Runs away from the threatening unknown, the unaddressed conflict, the carnivorous thing that thrives on neglect. But eventually, because it hasn't been faced, it grows and devours them. The hero confronts the conflict, the other is consumed by avoiding it.
That choice to voluntarily face the internal inconsistency, the threat, the chaos, seems to be the thread connecting everything we've discussed.
From Festinger's dissonance pushing us to change beliefs, to Porges' neuroception needing safety but growth requiring risk,
Yeah.
to IFS asking us to meet our protectors, to Levine asking us to touch the trauma vortex.
We're wired for stability, but growth demands we engage with instability.
It seems the greatest psychological treasures are often guarded by the very dragons we're most afraid to face.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we've seen how the mind seeks consistency and the body seeks safety. Yet almost every path towards deeper integration and growth seems to require bravely, voluntarily, turning towards the discomfort, the inconsistency, the perceived threat.
Which leads us to a final thought for you, the listener, to perhaps carry forward.
Considering this fundamental tension, our wiring for safety versus the call to grow through challenge.
What long-held belief that feels inconsistent, or perhaps what painful pattern of avoidance that keeps you feeling safe but stuck? If you were to voluntarily engage with that, with mindful curiosity, what great treasure might be waiting to be discovered in your own unconscious?
That feels like the ultimate conflict, and perhaps the most rewarding question we can ask ourselves. Thank you for joining us in this exploration.